G'day viewers, how are you? Hope it's doing well for you wherever you are in the world. Just doing a quick video on the idea of how would I prepare for a full-scale zombie war. It's a little bit different to how most people would do it, I think. Basically, besides the physical threat of the zombies, you'd be dealing with, the viral threat of either some sort of bloodborne or airborne contagion. So I'd be looking at masking up, much like COVID, but not only that, you've got to be tactical in this situation. So I'd be wearing some sort of helmet. Probably I would go with the modern equivalent of a knight's helmet. So I've actually got a knight's helmet here, a replica one. So there's my knight's helmet, which is a replica one that I have. That one is the Locksley helmet out of the movie with Russell Crowe in it. It's just a replica of one. But a helmet like that, I mean, it's still got an open slit visor, which unfortunately liquids could get into that, even though it's very good, defensively against blows to the head. It's not very good against viral agents like blood and airborne contaminants. So I think something like a full-face motorcycle helmet, today's equivalent of a knight's helmet, would be ideal for a zombie war. So you've got a plastic visor which you can see through. It protects against bloodborne and airborne agents. Airborne agents to a less extent, but certainly blood splatter and stuff like that. It's not going to get through the visor if it's well sealed enough. And if you're wearing a mask, well, you're going to be good, and it gives you some protection against blows to the head, which could be important. The other thing I'd be looking at would be wearing gloves. So good set of leather motorcycle gloves. Once again, it's protecting your skin from being cut or abraded, in which case some sort of contamination can get in there and you become a zombie because you're infected with the virus. A good leather jacket, and a leather jacket that doesn't have an open collar, one that can be zippered all the way up to the neckline. So I've got a nice one which can do that. It zippers right up, goes right around the neckline. So with your helmet on and your zipper up motorcycle leather jacket and your motorcycle leather gloves, you've really got some pretty good protection against abrasion, cuts, contamination by bloodborne or airborne agencies, or physical attacks, scratches, cuts and blows. To a large extent, you've also got, mobility. It's not too heavy, it's not too cumbersome, it still allows you to get around fairly effectively. Another thing you'd be looking at is what sort of, trousers or whatever to wear. I'd probably be going with a full length set of trousers to protect your skin, once again, cuts and abrasions. I'd probably go with a pair of stretch fabric jeans. Okay, so a nice stretchy pair of jeans, which would allow you to be protected from cuts, scratches and abrasions. And the other aspect of it is that you're still fairly mobile in that you can still run in a pair of stretched jeans without too much trouble. Not sure how clothing would go in water, but that's really a different sort of scenario. You'd really need to, realistically, if you're getting into water, you don't want a lot of clothing on, so that's a totally different scenario, which would take a whole set of different, ways of approaching it. But, water would be a great way, obviously, getting away from the zombies and stuff like that, They wouldn't be able to smell you if you're traveling through water. As long as your clothing doesn't weigh you down to that extent, or potentially drag you under, or allow someone to drag you under by grabbing your clothing, well then keep the clothing on. If you're trying to swim through water that's infested with zombies, then you'd want to be taking most of your clothing off so that you couldn't be grabbed at and by the clothing and dragged under. But potentially, you're risking some sort of bloodborne infection by doing that, because you could be scratched. You could get blood on your face or whatever, or breathe it in. So, yeah, you would need to be sort of masked up in some way or protected from that, or just being able to get out of the way of that by being fast through the water. So that might be your best option in that situation. So obviously the obvious footwear would be running shoes, because you want to be fast. Because I think your best defense against zombies is going to be getting away from them, fleeing from them. Okay, in terms of offensive weapons, I would not go with guns of any description, because basically ammunition is going to be something that's in short supply. Most people will go with guns, and that would mean that ammunition would be very hard to get. Also, another thing that's been pointed out about the use of guns is that they attract attention because they're very noisy. So once you fire a gun, you're basically indicating to every zombie in the area where you are located, and they go running to that location. So you want something that's not noisy and doesn't use up a valuable resource that would eventually run out. So what are your options? My suggestion is go with good old medieval style weapons. So we're talking about swords. That's right, and I have some good examples of swords around my home. So this one up here is actually a replica of a saber weapon, which is used when you're on horseback. It's a Picarero practice saber. Not particularly a great choice of weapon, like a saber. You've got other things like my replica here of the that's the mortuary hilt sword, which was used famously by the leader of the Roundheads at the time. He was what was his name? Yeah, so actually Oliver Cromwell. That's a replica of Oliver Cromwell's mortuary hilt sword. It's a bit like an axe. It's very heavy cutting, one-edged sword, which is virtually an axe. Good in some situations, but not great in others. You've got the kind of old style medieval double-bladed broadsword. That's an Ulfbert, a replica of an Ulfbert, which is a double-sided axe in essence. It's a fairly heavy and unwieldy weapon as well. Another option, and probably my personal favourite, would be my side sword. So this little beastie here is called a side sword. It's a very light and nimble dueling weapon, but it's short in comparison to something like a rapier, which was much longer. And the reason why people went to this kind of style of weapon away from the rapier is because in close quarters combat, you want something that's not big, cumbersome and unwieldy like a rapier. You want something shorter. So this is short. It's good for stabbing and thrusting, cutting, hacking. It does a bit of everything. It's the ultimate personal self-defense weapon in terms of a sword than I can think of, and that would be my option. I'd have a side sword like that. So yeah, the basic idea is that you've got something that doesn't make noise, doesn't draw attention to yourself, can be carried anywhere, can be used in close quarters combat. It's highly effective at cutting off different body parts, including probably be able to decapitate a zombie's head if it's sharp enough. And the other thing I'd have is probably a good sort of knife, basically a good army knife or hunting knife or something like that, just on your belt, a hunting knife. You never know when you might need to cut ropes, or you might need an option as a weapon. So you can actually throw hunting knives. They can be thrown at something, so they give you the capability of a long range weapon, or not just a close combat weapon, something you can throw it at something to stop them or slow them down. If you practice throwing a knife, it's a highly effective alternative to a gun. Even if you could get your hands on a bow and arrow, that would be highly effective as well. I'd go with that. I mean, I don't know to what extent somebody who's, infected with these kind of potential zombie viruses that are out there, whether they can be stopped easily, like a normal human being, or whether they need something more extreme, like decapitation of their head, to actually stop them. That would be something you would have to work out on the fly, and your weapon of choice would be the thing that is most effective in that situation. So if it's decapitation that you need, then a sword. If they can be killed using a bow and arrow or knife, then have one of those, but I'd suggest having it anyhow. If it doesn't kill them, it's going to slow them down. But steer away from the guns, because it's going to run out of ammo, and it's going to draw attention to yourself. So I think I've just about covered everything. Besides the obvious stuff, if you're going to need to get yourself into a defensive fortification position, you're going to have to have a lot of food and water supplies. You're going to have to be in it for the long haul. So all the best. God bless. And let's hope that we're not here during a zombie apocalypse. And if you're a Christian believer like me, well, we believe that we're going to be taken in the rapture and won't have to suffer through the entirety of the tribulation, which is the most likely timeline for a zombie apocalypse. So God bless you all. Stay safe.